Fake news is an expression used to indicate false news or pseudo news. It indicates information that is partly or completely untrue, misleading or distorted, intentionally or non-intentionally disseminated through the web or the media. When intentional, it arises with the deliberate intent to misinform, for basically ideological or economic reasons. Modern communication. There is nothing new in the practice of spreading false news in order to influence public opinion, make money, provoke dissent, or find consensus. However, with the advent of new technologies, it is now easier than ever to circulate disinformation. There are various means of spreading it, from mass media such as television and newspapers to radio broadcasts. And yet, with the advent of the internet and especially with social media sharing, the spread of fake news has increased, bringing with it an exponential increase in disinformation and misinformation. Disinformation is unintentionally false information, while misinformation is an incorrect or misleading information even if not intentionally constructed and transmitted. So the advent of the internet and web technologies has radically changed the paradigm of news and information consumption. Online platforms play a crucial role, becoming increasingly central to the cultural, social, political, and civil life of users. Just to give a few examples. Every 60 seconds on Facebook, now mainly used only by the over 50s, 3.3 million posts are created, 510,000 comments are published, and 293,000 statuses are updated. Every 60 seconds, 29 million messages are exchanged on WhatsApp, and every 60 seconds, 3.8 million searches are carried out on Google. So, what information? The production of information in the international system identifies 5 varieties of topics addressed by the media and offered to the public. Hard news, culture and entertainment, economy, science and technology, and sport. Hard news are news on current affairs, for example, natural events, crime and judicial news such as murders, violence, accidents, and so on, politics, elections, party issues, and events of international relevance, for example, world's foreign policy, human rights, etc. With soft news, we mean culture and entertainment and sport, that is, entertainment news, while economy and science and technology are more specialized news. The largest volume of information, almost half of all news circulating in the media, on the web or on social media, concerns hard news content. On the contrary, science and technology is the sector with the lowest volume of information. Scientific and technological news, in fact, presuppose specific knowledge of the sector, a higher level of culture and education, and are therefore of interest only to a small number of readers. As a result, the information fed into the media circuits will also be a minimal percentage compared to the most popular ones. Debunking is a practice by specialists in the field, the debunkers, who use scientific methodologies to unmask fake news. LDA, latent Dirichlet allocation, is a machine learning algorithm with which one can trace the subject of sentences not by interpreting the text, but by association of co-occurrences, so as to also identify echo chambers clicked by users of websites, documents, articles, images, and pages or social network accounts, posts or tweets. Given a series of texts, the most recurring words or expressions are identified, and from this, the echo chambers of a user are also identified. In this case, echo chamber 1, work and banks for 90%, echo chamber 2, history for 10%. Specialized debunking interventions and the use of the LTA algorithm make it possible to quantify the volume of fake news, disinformation, or misinformation online. The result is that it is precisely the lack of knowledge on the sector and of an adequate level of culture and education that make this scientific and technological sector the most fertile field for the spread of fake news, which particularly concerns health news, vaccines, medical breakthroughs, therapeutic treatments, news on the environment and climate change, news on technological innovations. Typologies of fake news. According to a study carried out by the La Sapienza University of Rome, there are 6 types of fake news spread on the web, websites, and social networks. The first one is disinformation, based on fake news created specifically to mislead or confuse, as intelligence agencies or military forces do, but also companies if they want to confuse competitors before launching a product. The concept of disinformation in the English language is distinguished from misinformation, which refers to information that may even be non-intentionally false. Propaganda, when information is strategically packaged to support an idea or win over the public, speaking to the heart or belly before than to the mind. Propaganda often makes use of disinformation, resorting to the use of lies as a means of mass persuasion. The aim of propaganda is thus always to generate consent, regardless of the nature of the information it conveys, whether true or false. Partisanship. Information that is not necessarily false but certainly partisan, presented in such a way as to defend interest or advance the views of certain sectors and interest groups. This type of information may concern the debate on sectoral issues like vaccines, climate change, political decisions, etc. Journalistic errors. In this case, fake news is related to human errors. The journalist or news editor may have verified the sources, but the sources may lie or be unreliable. Hoax. Satire and hoax are amusing false news created to make people laugh. They are always fake news, although in these 2 cases the purpose is only parody or criticism of the system and hilarity. Very often, however, these hoax news stories are taken up later for clickbaiting reasons. And finally, conspiracy theories. These are narratives that, although untrue, are likely to condition the way individuals relate to reality and their political choices. At the origin of the attraction exerted by conspiracy theories is the need to find an ultimate reason for our discomforts, which leads us to search for a superior logic, capable of reducing the complexity of the world and channeling generalized anxiety, widespread insecurity, and uncertainty onto specific fears. When speaking of fake news, in other words, one could speak of satire or parody, which in itself has no negative value. Indeed, many legal systems, including the Italian one, reserve it a constitutional guarantee as an art form. However, it not infrequently happens that it is manipulated at will, especially to the treatment of adversaries and political contenders. Misleading content. This is information that has been misrepresented or subject to tendentious framing, with the aim of putting someone or something in a bad light. False content. This is 100% false news, constructed ad hoc to support or, on the contrary, to harm an idea, a character, a movement, a position. Strictly speaking, these are the real fake news, such as those that repeatedly announce the death of famous actors or the one that wanted Pope Francis to support Trump's candidacy during the 2016 US presidential election. Misleading content. Again, this is fake news, but attributed to sources that really exist and are generally very credible. Manipulated content. This is news that, although it has a basis in truth, is manipulated ad hoc. Misleading context. Not only the fact itself, often also the choice of a series of contextual elements can be biased, misleading the reader and thus contributing to the creation of fake news. And finally, misleading link. Paratext such as images, references to other articles, etc. can also be misleading. Characterizing elements of fake news. Regardless of the type, every fake news on social networks or websites is characterized by the co-presence of 5 main elements. False content, the so-called fake content, contagiousness and massive dissemination of the same in every place and at a single time, that is, massive influence, malicious, intentionally misleading and intentionally wrong or modified intent, ideological, political or economic motivation of those who create and then spread it. Emotional influence, that is the ability to involve and influence emotional states in order to condition the user's behavior or thinking. Origin and motivation of fake news. At the creation stage, the fake message takes on different characteristics depending on the objectives of the creators and the target audience for which the disinformation or misinformation is intended. But it is always devised in such a way as to activate the audience to which it is addressed and to involve them in the further dissemination of the message. Basically, those who run fake news websites, online platforms, or publish news on the web and on social networking sites want as many visitors as possible to their sites. Some may want their visitors to see the content in order to share their political and ideological values. Others simply want internet or social users to click on them for commercial purposes, because when a website contains advertisements, these visits generate payments to the website owner. Both these motivations, ideological and commercial, require the passage of as many users as possible in order to achieve the intended purpose, that is, the viral propagation of disinformation or misinformation. So, the true purposes for fake news are basically clickbaiting, that is, phishing users with a click, using sensational headlines, content and images with which to attract as many internet users as possible to generate online advertising revenue, and newsjacking, which means exploiting a news story, hot topic or trend to insert oneself in the flow of conversations on the web or on social networks so as to attract strong media coverage and consequently give visibility to the company, products, services and content. Where fake news comes from. Ad hoc websites, The first step in building fake news is to create a website on which the fake news will be presented or hosted. A domain usually looks something like wesempio.com and can be regarded as the name of the website. The owners of these fake news sites have a strong interest in making them look as much like a real news website as possible, so that people are more likely to trust them. The layout and design of fake news websites are also specially designed to look as much like real news websites as possible. Content theft. Owners of fake news websites often steal their content. And the most common place where these actors steal news are satire websites, which often publish parodies of news. Owners of fake news websites simply visit these websites, copy and republish the content on their own sites, attempting to pass this information off as real. So the process is extremely simple. It only requires copying and pasting. The title is very important. Catchy and explosive headlines can make people click on fake news without even looking at who shared it or the source where it originated. An example is a bombshell published some time ago in many newspapers that saw Matteo Renzi accused of having persuaded the Italian Parliament to implement the European Union directive on the reduction of plastic bags in 2017 for the sole purpose of favoring a businesswoman who owns a company friendly to the Italian Democratic Party. It was evidently a fake news based on theft of content and exactly a meme published by Renzi himself, thus a hoax to be ironic about inferences made on him. Dissemination via social media. Fake news sites need visitors, and social media provide them. People see a headline or an abbreviated news item on a social, click on it, and the web browser opens to the specific page where the fake news is hosted. The most common way to do this is to create fake accounts and post to existing groups. Just as they can steal content to try to make it truthful, they can steal identities, create fake accounts on social media platforms, and pass them off as real ones too, banking on the fact that both the people and the news seem normal and without hidden reasons. Because obviously these fake profiles are purpose-built for the needs the fake news producers are targeting. A strategy is to add friends at random and send them links to the fake news site. A more subtle strategy, however, is to find already existing interest groups on Facebook or hashtag on Twitter with exploitable interests. For example, one could send outrageous headlines and links about animal abuse to social media groups of animal lovers, or send political news to a group of supporters of a party. This kind of social media seeding is the most proactive step in the supply chain of fake news factory. Sale of advertising. The owners of these sites can earn a small amount of money per visitor by selling parts of their web pages to advertising companies. For the owners of these fake news sites, the process is largely automatic and the work needed to set them up is minimal. Advertisers place advertisements on these pages, and the advertising companies act as an intermediary by linking ads purchased from other companies to news sites with the advertising company's algorithm deciding who sees the ads. The algorithms developed by these advertising companies use tracking data that websites collect based on a user's web viewing history. Using this data, advertising companies can create a consumer profile, an echo chamber, that allows them to target the ads that are most likely to induce people to click on them, clickbaiting. The well-known cookies tracking software can note what other web pages the user has viewed and what they clicked on. How to recognize fake news. Fake news often lacks sources or mention false or incomplete sources. There is a large use of fake social profiles, names of invented experts, non-existent institutes or organizations. Headlines are always bombastic and catchy, as is the language. The content is presented in a categorical way for the sole purpose of eliciting a position or extreme opinion. Images are created ad hoc and photos almost always retouched. Invented or modified stories of people are also often used in fake news. The strategies that can be adopted to read a news story critically and thus find out if someone wants to take advantage of our misinformation or disinformation are: first of all, consider the source. Click away from the story to investigate the site, its mission, and its contact info. Second, read beyond. Headlines can be outrageous in an effort to get clicks. Ask yourself, what's the whole story? Then, third, check the author. Do a quick search on the author and ask yourself if they are credible or if they are real. Then, fourth, check the date. Reposting old news stories doesn't mean they're relevant to current events. Fifth, ask yourself and check if there are supporting sources. Click on those links and determine if the given info actually supports the story. Sixth, ask yourself, is it a joke? If it is too outlandish, it might be satire. Research the site and author to be sure. Seventh, check your biases. Consider if your own beliefs could affect your judgment. And finally, ask the experts. Consult a fact-checking site. Here are some examples of the main and most authoritative fact-checking sites both for Italy and the International Information Circuit.